Hello, and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Mass Transit and sponsored by Hitachi America. Today's roundtable is entitled Transforming the Passenger Experience to Meet New Expectations. This presentation is both live and interactive, so you can ask a question at any time via the Ask a Question box in the presentation window. We will answer as many of the questions as we have time during the Q&A portion at the end of this webinar. If you have technical difficulties during the webinar, just type your issue into the Ask a Question box and a member of our team will assist you. If you're running a pop-up blocker software, you will need to disable it to view the webinar. In addition, it is recommended that you close down all other applications for better performance. For your convenience, this presentation will be available on demand viewing within 24 hours of this live event. A reminder email will be sent to all registrants containing a link to the presentation for on-demand viewing. It will also be accessible from Mass Transit's website, www.masstransitmag.com/webinars, or by navigating to the webinars page from the hamburger menu to the left of the Mass Transit logo. I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to today's presenters. First, we'll hear from, we have a quick substitution today, Kyle Royal, who is the Senior Solutions Engineer for Hitachi Global Social Innovation Business. We'll also hear from Carlo Santos, Senior Director of Sales from Syniverse. Carlo currently holds the position of Senior Director of Sales for the enterprise line of business, overseeing Syniverse's indirect and partner ecosystem for the Americas region. He has been with Syniverse for over 7 years. We'll also hear from John Slott, who's the Chief Innovation Officer at Central Florida Regional Transportation Authority. William John Slott is the Chief Innovation Officer of the Central Florida Regional Transportation Authority, doing business as Lynx, a public agency in the state of Florida responsible for providing and coordinating transportation services within 3 counties of Orange, Osceola, and Seminole. Now more than ever, passengers are seeking safe, efficient, and sustainable forms of public transportation. Customers have a multitude of choices, and the pandemic has created new demands. As passengers slowly return to public transportation, transit authorities and municipalities have the opportunity to transform the travel experience to meet these new demands. An enhanced passenger experience can be the catalyst to increased ridership. Digital solutions enable this transformation, creating capabilities like capacity monitoring, easy for me to say, capacity monitoring, route optimization, and mobile messaging. They can even be the foundation for fleet electrification or carbon emissions monitoring. Now I'm going to move to change slides. Okay. So we're at a tipping point in mass transit. We're living through a global pandemic, which has placed an enormous strain on public transportation with increased concerns for safety. More people are working from home, and there's also a desire to invest in infrastructure. You each have very different perspectives. What changes have you observed in both passenger and operational needs? John, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Emily. I think as the pandemic has shown us, we got supremely focused in transit operations to our mission. So providing safe, reliable, and cost-effective mass transit throughout the pandemic time, and of course, into now where we see multiple waves of the pandemic coming back, we focus really on that mission. So the pandemic first gave us an opportunity to focus, number one, and number two, it was all about passenger safety, and it was about those passengers that had an essential need to move throughout our community. So everything from our paratransit services, getting folks to and from dialysis appointments in the middle of a global pandemic, to our first responders and essential staff that were working in hospitals and nursing to get them to and from work on an effective and efficient and safe basis. So this pandemic really got us there, got us to really focus on the core mission. Then we actually built muscles that, as public agencies, we know how to get things done. We just don't necessarily do them very quickly. As bureaucracies, as public servants, we have many steps to go through. Well, the pandemic allowed us to really build new muscles about making sure, of course, we do projects the right way with all of the requirements of the federal, state, and the statute that we work within, being good stewards of taxpayer money. But in addition to that, actually do it quickly. So we've done things like we took our call center remote to protect our employees and protect our essential mission within 1 month, 3 weeks operationally, and 1 week to lift it into the cloud. We took all of our 52 folks that are in our call center and had them working remotely within that frame. That's an 18-month program in any other world, but in a pandemic, we did that. We did the same thing with our farebox technologies. We needed a contactless payment and improved passenger experience there. We replaced all of our fare boxes on a 300 vehicle fleet in roughly 30 days. And that was from project inception, getting on the phone with our partners, to complete project done. We also put in 100% automated passenger counts on our fleet. We put sneeze guards and then driver protection shields in our fleet. So we got very, very good at doing those things that were mission critical now with the pandemic. And now that muscle's been built. So now it's a question of, okay, now as we return to whatever this new reality is, utilizing all of that great capability now that, and that agency confidence to be able to say, okay, yeah, we can do these things and we can do them quickly and correctly and right. So now we're looking at how do we really develop the next generation of seamless passenger interaction from a multimodal system. So people want to use mass transit. How do they get from their home, that first mile, last mile equation, all the way to their final destination? How do we do that? Because the needs-based riders stayed with us throughout the pandemic. And of course, because they have to, we are their only option. Now we've taken all these things and it's applying it against those choice-based riders and saying, okay, so choice-based riders, will you choose to step away from your car 1 time a week, 2 times a week, maybe every day of the week? So as we as a community recover, our leaders are actually, one of our county leaders, Orange County, Mayor Demings is actually considering and made public announcement of a tax referendum for 1 penny sales tax. If that goes on the ballot in next year's general election, we could be a very, very different agency. And now is the question of what could that future be? So we need to start doing those things that can get ready for the future today. And the pandemic gave us an opportunity to really build muscles that'll help us get there.
Great, John. Kyle, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, I think John really hit home a key point that the pandemic has actually been an opportunity for organizations to really take a look and quickly look for a digital future. The clientele, and again, John classified it very well, the optional riders are really looking at how can they consume data in a different way, and how can it compete with travel in a car? How does it become easier for somebody to get through the system and not have to worry about 3 apps and 2 different things and all the different components that they would have to normally do to take public transportation? And then finally, there's an opportunity really to solve the last mile problem within America. The fact that most people have to walk at least a mile to a bus stop or to some sort of form of public transportation. And I think we're seeing that with digital solutions and honestly other new and innovative ways of moving people through the system, whether it's small, light electric vehicles or concierge type services that are almost as cost effective as having all of the needs-based riding. Those are all managed and able to come to fruition through the digital world. And so I think ultimately making sure that we have the digital solutions and the capabilities to meet these new riders and ultimately grow the ridership for the transportation organizations, that's the key.
Great. Carlo?
Yeah, I think these are all great points. And basically what we've seen is across industries, to be honest. We've seen retail, hospitality, all of these industries have had to accelerate their journeys within digital transformation. And transport authorities and public transport are not going to be the exception, right? So now you've got passengers that are looking for new ways to consume information. They want to stay safe. So they want to engage with those transport authorities, get the latest information that they can potentially get. But they want to do this now through their new means, which is the digital engagement, mobile engagement using their phones or other means, and have more control over that travel experience. What we're seeing is that passengers are looking to be able to consume information as they need it, and they will go into the different channels that we enable for them to consume that information the best way that serves their advantage, and also keeps them informed in a way that they can take the most advantage of time and make informed decisions if they need to do any adjustments. So what we're seeing is that whereas passengers previously were a bit more passive in the way they engaged with transport, now they want to have more control, they want to engage more, and want to have different options to do so. So it's a transforming ecosystem. I think it's going to be accelerating in that transformation. The pandemic is a big piece of it, just because people were kind of pushed into digital, where before it was almost a bit of a choice. But I think we're in the right position, in the right moment in time to take advantage of that momentum and actually move that experience forward. So I believe we can get a negative and turn it into a positive in a sense, where we can really take leapfrog technology and engagement in a different way.
Great. Thanks, Carlo. We all know how important safety is in the current climate. What safety measures can be taken to give passengers peace of mind? What digital solutions can enable this? John, we'll start with you again.
Yeah, I think there are a few different things here. So I think part of this is perception, part is reality. So with the pandemic, new things are important. I don't think we would have all thought of air quality on a bus in the same way we do today. So one of the things our agency did was we actually invested in UV technologies on our buses. It's UV hydrogen peroxide emitters on all of our buses to improve the disinfecting. So it's an always-on disinfecting system that is safe for people to be around all the time, but of course improves and kills things like COVID, the SARS virus, as well as, nice part, it makes the bus smell better. So you have a little bit of, back to Carlos' point, we went and tackled one problem, we solved another one. So for everybody that doesn't like the smell on a public bus, guess what? Ta-da, it just took a global pandemic to do so. On the other hand, I think some of the things around safety is some of these concepts of how do you take, if you're trying to give people another option than a car, if that's the question you're trying to solve, you really have to take away all that ambiguity of a multimodal journey. So to the point I think Kyle was raising and Carlo was raising, if somebody walks out of their house, they know their car is available, they get their driveway, they drive, and they don't think about it, even though it might take 45 minutes to get there. It is the known. So how do you take that person and give them the known of a public transit journey? The neat part would be through these behavioral nudges. Hey, by the way, you're getting out of your car or you're getting out of your house. There's an electric scooter 3 blocks away. Would you like to reserve it? Hit the button. Go over to the scooter. It's there. You're on it. You get on the scooter. You go to the bus stop. The bus stop, it's a turn-by-turn experience all the way without a plan, without having to sit down and do multiple fare systems, without the need to actually sit down and even rethink your commute. You can actually just be immersed in it. The other part at the end of the day is it's probably going to be cheaper than driving your car. You've got a health index. Hey, you've got 7,000 steps that day versus your 250 because you went from your garage to your car and back again. So you get a health index. And then, of course, for all of us in the sustainability world, of course, myself is very close to my heart, is you're now reducing your carbon footprint in a very, very real way. And then at the end of the day, time is our most valuable asset. So can I make a time journey that provides the quality of life I wish to have as a commuting population? So, and that comes back to how do we make sure that all of our transportation networks don't lose sight of that as well, because you have to have high frequency mass transit options to make all these multimodal journeys make sense versus a car. So I can't wait for a bus every hour and still make it on time. I have to have that 15-minute, 20-minute frequency headways to really make these multimodal journeys occur. So, you know, it's about the basics when we're talking multimodal journeys. You have to have the basic transportation network, and then these technologies that just enhance it and take away the barriers. And that's the intent. So we're looking forward to how do we make that next leapfrog.
Great. Kyle, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
Specifically about safety, I think one of the key things is also in the pandemic and in the post-COVID world is a lot of people want to make their own decisions. And to be able to do that, we've got to get them the information. First, we have to collect the information, but then also give them an information that's readily available. So how many people are on the next bus? How crowded is it? Is that going to change my journey? And I think we'll see more and more rider preference and honestly individual preference on saying, hey, I'm going to hold off and wait 15 minutes for the next bus because there's a whole crowd of people getting on this bus, and it's just a comfort thing. And so I think that's one thing that we've really got to be aware of as providers and technology partners of how do we make that more convenient, collect it, and provide it.
Great. Carlo, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think Kyle and John have both hit the nail on the head. From my perspective, it's also how now passengers can provide their feedback in a completely different way than they were able to previously, right? So if you notice from a safety perspective, you notice there's something wrong with a bus, or there's something that's broken, a seat might have an issue, or maybe there's even a traffic incident that you want to report. Before, what would have to happen is you would have to either get into a survey or fill out a physical document at the depot or at the bus stop and put it in somewhere in a mailbox and hope that someone's going to pick that up and read it and take some action. Now you have very different options for you to engage with those passengers and have them immediate access to providing a report, an incident report, something concerning safety or health that they want to communicate to that transport authority they're consuming the service from. And to Kyle's point, I think the topic of how busy, how occupied a specific bus is at a given moment in time, that'll allow passengers to make informed decisions, which I think is key. So if you're really concerned about social distancing, some people are more concerned than others, so it won't apply to all. Maybe you skip that bus that's coming in at 75, 80% when you did that lookup and you got that real-time information of your specific bus that's coming to the bus stop. But if you want to, but if it comes in at 25% and you're comfortable, you can make that decision, get on your bus, and no surprises, right? Previously, that would have been a bit more difficult to manage. It was more of you knowing which routes are busier than others and kind of getting used to that cadence. With the technology that we have available and the way Hitachi can bring those data points and Syniverse can deliver them, it just brings a lot of value to that experience as a passenger. So safety is right now top of mind for a lot of individuals. It was what initially started the decline of use of public transport. I believe we have the tools to actually transform that into a much different experience, and passengers gain confidence again that they can take decisions and actually use transport the way they feel more comfortable in doing so, and be successful in getting to their jobs or any sort of activity they want to get to without having to spend that additional money using their own car and having a bigger carbon footprint, which is all what we're all looking to do. Reduce that footprint.
Great. And now, what about efficiency? How can these new digital solutions help improve efficiencies? John, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think on this one, I think when you think of mass transit, especially in our role as a transit agency for a a multiple county region, 2,500 square miles of 2.5 million people, and we have the beauty of 75 million tourists that show up on our shores every single year here in Orlando. So we're sort of a mid-size or maybe small city that balloons to this metropolis because of the tourist population that comes in and chooses to spend their vacations with us. So with that, we have these sort of unique situation and a beautiful little living lab of some of the things that Carlo and Kyle have been talking about. So one of our strategic directions is we're elegant followers. We're also as public officials and employees of a government agency, stewards of a taxpayer's mission. So with that being said, it's critical for us to create data that can be used by the private sector to help our residents, passengers, tourists move and have frictionless experiences throughout the region. So a simple thing is we ascribe and publish all of our what's called GTFS and GTFS real-time data. So those are transit file structure. It's used to be Google, now General. But basically what it does is provide all our route structures and all of our real-time information. So where's my bus and so on can happen. And as a cog in the wheel of the transportation network, we can then submit our information in a standardized manner so that all of these different private agencies and private organizations build mobile applications. We can meet passengers where they are. So meeting passengers where they are, we're a smaller agency. Can we ask 75 million tourists that show up on our shores to download our application and use it for the week they're here and then unload it when they go? No, I want a London tourist that comes to our shores, use their London application. By the way, anybody from London, feel free. It works. You can use your London Transit app here in Orlando because we publish and nicely, kindly enough, the folks in London actually ingest our data and allow for it. So that guest, that passenger can use that information. Same thing goes with a local resident that may want to use Move It or Transit app or Apple or Google. They can pull it up in their application. They do not need to come to the transit agency. And quite candidly, we're not a development shop. We are not going to be in the business of creating custom applications. That's where we partner with the private sector. So I would say that's where the passenger experience gets touched. Now the next generation is, especially as we prepare for this potential tax referendum, is we need to change the way we plan. So for everybody that's been involved in transit planning, transit planning is a very detailed process that has quite a bit of rigor in it. So you build your plan, you figure out exactly what that design is going to be, you go through all your public hearings. You may take a year building a plan for a corridor or a route. And then you go to the public meetings, final, you get your authorization, you get your money, and then someone asks the $1 million question and they say, what if you did this? And it's, oh my God, I've now got to go redo that whole plan again. So, and then it takes another 12 months to get that plan updated. So you end up having multiple corridors in your region that you've planned, 20 times, 15 times, and not executed a plan because the speed of planning is an 18-month window. So as we move into this future, and as the pandemic has showed us, we can do things differently. The thought of developing digital twins of our route structures and inside of our community with layers for the transportation network, for the transit network, for the last mile, first mile, or first mile, last mile options, for TNCs, for so on. All those other cogs, light rail, heavy rail, commuter rail, intercity rail, intra-city rail, all those things being stacked on top of each other, and then being able to say, what if? And utilizing all the things that we use in other industries, so many industries, including entertainment industry, uses optimization research OR to be able to identify guest behavior. Our community uses it all the time, right? Why couldn't we point that same type of mathematical technology, statistical technology, at a transportation world? So the tools we have today don't do that. They can't simulate the whole environment all at one time. We can do a corridor, we can do a group of stops, we can identify a scenario and play it out. But we can't do a simulation, 6,000 iterations in multi-seconds and say, here's the optimal way to build out this route based on all the data you have. So I think that's the future, is speeding up the pace of planning so that it aids in decisioning. And then we can live and learn and change our transportation network more dynamically.
John, do Link's passengers know that their travel information is being shared with TfL?
I'm sorry? With TfL?
It just says TfL. I'm guessing that's London. Transport for London. Transport for London.
It's not passenger information. So thank you for the clarification. It's not passenger information. So we're mass transit. Our passengers are anonymous by definition. So what we're showing in the Google standard, or the general standard now, is our route structures and real time where the bus is, not who's on the bus. We never show that. There's no who's on the bus number, right? And all we show to the world is just where the bus is and what the route is.
Great. Kyle, do you have anything to add to the efficiency?
So first, John's been very modest because his area, and honestly, the state of Florida, is very progressive in this. And I think it's phenomenal that they're making this available and open to disruptive startups, companies coming in. And that, I believe, is one of the keys to these systems becoming much more efficient, is being open to potentially disruptive technology that could help solve some of these issues. And, on the slides, we highlighted a few of the friction points that honestly still need to be solved in a lot of different transportation systems. And data is one of the keys to being able to solve this. How do we get the data from hypothetically a ride sharing app into a transportation app like Lynx into potentially a metro rail solution, and how do they share that information so that you're able to start to remove this friction and change customer behavior, or help customer behavior, encourage certain behaviors for customers. And so I think, again, that's really all about the data. There's a question out there of what is Hitachi doing in this space? And to be honest, we are doing quite a bit. We have some solutions that help with the transfer of data. We work with Syniverse specifically on some of these solutions on getting information into the hands of constituents so that they can, again, make the best choice on, this bus is delayed, so maybe I won't walk to the bus station just yet because it's raining, because I know I've got to wait 15 minutes for that next bus. And then there are other areas of Hitachi. So we have 865 companies, and one of our larger one is Hitachi Rail, that helps create systems that manage the rail systems that, again, can be provided back into the transportation system so that we can really start to get to this effortless multimodal journey for a customer. Emily?
Great. With increased competition and disruptive technologies, customers' expectations are ever evolving. How are you addressing new customer demand? Carlo, this one is for you first.
Okay, thank you, Emily. So from our perspective, I think the first thing we always do, and I think this is true for any industry, to be honest, is we look at the customer journey. We want to understand from the consumer, in this case would be a passenger journey, if you will, what are those critical moments where we need to engage with them. And it's either that first engagement that we're not doing currently, and we want to make the passenger aware of different options, different communication options that are going to be available to them, or improve the way we're communicating to them. So in this slide, what we're showing here is we want to engage, we want to communicate to passengers in every stage of their commute. So when we're talking about three different examples of these stages, promote, engage, and transact, on the promote piece, where, when, and how do we communicate the availability of these new channels, whether it's SMS or whether we can send a push notification or an MMS? where do we reach that passenger so he has that information available and he can sign up to receive those notifications? Is it a billboard? Is it a bus signage inside the bus so he can opt in to receive notifications on that specific route which he takes every day to work? Do we use maybe some signage on the bus stop itself? As you can see here on the slide itself, you've got a QR code. You can scan it, which is basically the same process as taking a picture, and that's it. You're going to now send a keyword so we can opt you into the service. We're going to follow all of the rules and regulations on how we manage communications to customers, especially if we're using their mobile number. And once they're subscribed, then they can start doing different levels of transactions with their transport authority. And what's interesting here is you're going to have different levels of transactions depending on what they want to do with you, right? If they're opting in for a specific service and they want to receive notifications, they'll get that update. If they want to understand service availability or they want to understand bus capacity, they'll be able to basically register for the service that they're interested in moving into. And also monetization. I think that's a big piece. We haven't really talked about it too much, but I'll provide an example and we can do a deeper dive. But basically, how can the transport authorities partner with local businesses and start monetizing on that as part of the customer journey? And so I'll provide some examples just on the next slide so we can speak generally about engagement, but it's also important that we reiterate it goes beyond text messaging, right? I know we always speak about SMS. It is a very ideal channel in the sense that everybody knows how to send a text. It's pretty straightforward. So we have you can easily get that first engagement using a text, but then how do you move on from there, right? And just for the audience that's watching, we set up just very simple demos so you can have firsthand passenger experiences, if you will, of these three examples. So the first example is around general updates and delays and issues. So if you were to go ahead, if you're in the US, and send a text message with the number 20, because that's the number of the route you're interested in, understanding if there's any updates that you need to be aware of, to short code 72238, then you'll get a message back from the platform with a URL that will send you to the website that would provide the information that you need to make an informed decision about delays and issues. And I have to say as a disclaimer, SMS and data usage rates would apply if you do the demo. We need to make sure that you guys are aware of that. But it will give you an interesting experience of understanding what that would look like if you would implement that on your end. Offers and promotions. You're waiting at the bus stop and your passenger could potentially take advantage of a discount and get a coffee from that local shop that's behind him. If you now text bus to 72238, you're now going to get a mobile wallet downloaded into your phone, into your mobile, and you would walk into that shop potentially, you would get that barcode scanned and get that discount. We're showing on the demo a 50% discount. Do not try to go into any coffee shop. That's for demo purposes only, but it will give you a good idea of the different options that you could potentially put in place. And again, it's engaging with your passengers in a different way. It's giving them much more value of being part of your system. And last but not least, because it ties into what we were talking about, safety and efficiency, capacity reports. So if you text 40 space into that same code, 72238, you then receive a fictitious report of how a bus, now number 40, is in occupation as it's coming into your stop. So you'll be able to ask for that information in real time. And again, this is because of how Hitachi is working with the different transport authorities in gathering that information and having it available for Syniverse to deliver upon request by the different consumers. So Kyle and I have really had a lot of discussions on this. I know he's probably dying to jump in. So pass it on to you, Cal.
No, thank you, Carlos. I think one of the transportation organizations are one of the most interesting and difficult places probably to do digital solutions, because they have such a wide spectrum of demographics, of digital capabilities. And so, this is an excellent example of how we want to meet the customer at the level of digital readiness that they are at, and so I think John did a great job of saying, there's needs-based and choice-based. And so there's really two totally different demographics that need it. And so we want to make sure that we're able to address the whole segment. So obviously there's full features apps, but this is just a really neat and innovative way of reaching anybody. And again, going back to John's point of we want it to be seamless. We don't want people to necessarily be downloading apps when they come to a new city, and so here's another great example of by just scanning a quick QR code, you can start to understand all the different information about that local transportation authority, some of the different things that might be going on, and be able to move through that transportation system again without ever having to download that app. So I think that's a great, and it's been a phenomenal project working with Syniverse, and really we believe it's driven a lot of value for the different organizations that we've provided it to.
And if I could jump in here quickly, Emily, yeah. I mean, we are talking about apps and whether or not we can engage with customers, want to avoid going into apps as well. I know some of you in the audience might be thinking, wait, I actually invested a lot of money in my app. I want them to use my app. That's a channel, right? And we can use push as a notification channel within apps. What Kyle is referring to, and we've always talked about, is how can you make it an omni-channel experience? So you can leverage your investment. It does not mean that now you're not going to use your app. It's how you create that seamless experience where customers can decide how they want to engage, and potentially there's levels of engagement, right? So with the app, they can use it for different things. And if you want to consume a promotion or get a capacity report, they can quickly go and use the short code that's available on the bus, or it's available on the bus stop. That's the general idea here, how you can use an omni-channel approach to engaging with passengers.
Great. And John, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think this one's a neat one because it's all about passenger experience. Right. So what are agencies like ours? So, as we discussed a little bit earlier, and I think as the team's discussing here, is we can plan about things, we can talk about things, but until you start executing things, you really don't know how passengers are going to interact with it. So this is where innovation meets sustainability and technologies and just process and people's behavior, individual passengers' behavior. So some of the things we're doing as a community is with the auspices of our board, they asked us to focus on our workers, focus on how do we get folks to and from their jobs most effectively. So we have 3, what we affectionately call bites of the apple a year to make service changes in a mass transit world. So in those service changes, we are optimizing for end-to-end experience to move people rapidly around our region so that people can make that choice for our needs-based passengers. If we can save them 2 hours a day that they're not on the bus, how much time can you spend with your kids if you're not sitting on the bus for 2 hours a day? That's good quality time for anyone that we can give back if we do this optimization. So at the auspices of our board, we did that. So we have one of the largest service changes that we've had in probably the last 6 to 8 years coming up in December. Inside of those types of service changes, we're starting to look at what we call fast link, which the mass transit world will know as limited stop. So we're making express components of a local service to really help with that. And one of the things from a sustainability standpoint, we've already we've piloted electric buses on our local downtown circular. We call it Limo. It's the first BRT in the country, so it's been around for a very long time. We've enhanced that again now with battery electric vehicles, where 50% of that fleet is now battery electric. By next April, will be fully battery electric. So we are doing a pilot program here in the next couple of weeks, probably, hopefully, knock on wood, soon, to actually show a zero emission trip. So the ability to hop off an airplane at Orlando International Airport, get onto a coach electric bus, drive, take a ride to our Orange County Convention Center, connect to the 38, our other limited stop, go up to the Universal Superstop, and then take that bus direct to the downtown area, and then hop on another electric bus to use that limo down to the county administration building or city hall. You could do a zero emission trip all the way around our region is the construct. So, and we're going to gather passenger impact. It's a technology pilot to try to see what it's like. We have some really neat partnerships within our community and our vendor population, as well as our community leaders, so that it's allowing us to try these things. And then we're going to survey the heck out of our passengers. So what do you think? So some of the things that Carlo talked about. So, you know, we're utilizing some ArcGIS and some of these other activities to gather information, Survey 123, QR codes, some really neat marketing things. We're starting to bring all those things together to really be able to understand passenger experience and understand how they interact with new types of services and in the real world. And then the last piece, of course, is, you know, if you can do it without emission, you know, okay, that's just sort of like the cherry on top. We can do that all and provide an experience that, you know, when somebody's walking up to the bus, they don't smell diesel fuel and diesel exhaust, and the bus is quieter and so on. So, you know, those are just that huge something extra. It usually drives us is now also the something extra. So I think through those types of experiences, that's how efficiencies are going to happen, because we can talk about it forever, but until we start executing something, it's just a bunch of guesses. So now let's go execute, I guess.
Thanks, John. And since we're touching on sustainability, passengers have expressed an interest in sustainability. Can you tell us more, Kyle?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think you're starting to see really the change in customer demand for understanding what the carbon footprint for their trip is, and actually making decisions based off of that. I recently tried to book a flight, and when I went to go book the flight, it actually gave me my carbon impact from taking the different options of the flight, which I found interesting. I think you're going to see a huge electrification within the public transportation fleet. Honestly, that's one of the few areas where it makes a lot of sense to go into electric vehicles. They have depots, the infrastructure. Additionally, the rolling stock is ready. And so we often go through this transformation as we're talking to different fleets, municipalities, organizations about how do you convert over to EV, because there is going to be a lot of available capital funding, federal funding in the near term future to really help this transition. And so it starts with an evaluation. Right now, not all vehicles make sense to convert to EV. And as mentioned, buses are a phenomenal case. And obviously, John and his team are well ahead of the curve on the transformation. But the first step is understanding what are your needs, and ultimately what is out there that can meet the needs, and does it make sense, not only from a financial standpoint, but an operational standpoint, and then also from a sustainability standpoint. How is that going to, help my organization meet my larger organizations or state goals of going carbon neutral at some point in time? And then go ahead and get electrified. As John said, you really need to get your feet wet. And so that usually starts with a pilot of saying, okay, I understand what this vehicle is, just like the pilot around the APTA show of taking people to the convention center, and then understanding what that pilot told us and making decisions on how does that affect the larger rollout. It can't be understated. EVs are not ICE or internal combustion engines, and you do need to take some additional things into consideration about charging and charge management, battery management, driver behavior management. And to do that, you really need to be connected. So making sure that you have all those hooks to be able to get the data, that you can start to make better informed decisions about how you're doing the transformation, but then also how is your fleet going? A lot of these are new chassis, it's new technology. And so we really want to make sure that we're keeping our finger on the pulse of understanding how is it going? What are any early warning signs, of potential issues? And then the next round is going through an optimization. So driver behavior will significantly impact the battery lifespan. And so you really want to make sure that you're optimized this system. You've spent a lot of money and time in getting the system up and running, but then the next step is let's make sure it's working and it's as efficient as possible. That's going to help you on, honestly, the number of buses you potentially need, but then also how are you managing your charging? Because you're not always going to have a one-to-one charger to vehicle. We'd end up with acres and acres of chargers, and that is just not realistic. Additionally, we have to consider what's the impact on the grid. So we need to make sure that we're optimizing the vehicle charging with the grid. And then finally, as we're moving forward and these technologies are advancing, we will be in the era of autonomous vehicles in the near future. We already see it with some chassis, but I think there will be a wider adoption of it across all types of vehicles. And it will be very interesting to see how does that change and what other things are going to change with that. You know, no longer, hypothetically, in the future, you won't have stoplights anymore because all the vehicles will talk to the infrastructure and they'd be able to coordinate who goes through that intersection at the right time. That's in the far distant, but in the near future, we'll definitely have more autonomous or different levels of autonomous that help make things more efficient, lower the labor burden, and ultimately expedite new driving behavior.
Great, thanks. Move on to the next slide. I would imagine partnerships are key to taking these complex transportation opportunities, or I'm sorry, tackling these complex transportation opportunities. Can you talk a little bit about partnerships? And Carla, we'll start with you.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, and I think we've hinted all this throughout what we've spoken about for the last 45 minutes. And I think one of the examples is what I have on the screen here. Hitachi and Syniverse, we sat down when we first started working on our partnership, ideating on potential projects that we could take on together where we could add value to each other's capabilities. And Hitachi mentioned CATS, which is the Capital Area Transport System over in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. They were looking to enhance their engagement. They wanted to improve passenger experience, a lot of the things that we've been talking about today. And, you know, they've got 57 diesel buses, 3 electric buses, 3 trolleys, 16 cutaway vans. So they have different means within their system of how they engage with their passengers. But we were able to deploy a multi-channel messaging capability, again, joined with Hitachi's capability of bringing in those data points to make that information valuable. And what we've actually done is created a staged approach, right? It's a phased approach. So on phase 1, we deployed what we would call our initial capabilities around messaging and around directing passengers to different URLs and different means to gather that information. But we have other phases that have already been in discussion and we're going to push forward. But the general idea here is improving passenger engagement, getting more efficiency through schedule alignment, and basically giving that full journey visibility to passengers so they're able to make the best use possible of what's available to them. It's really been an interesting experience. I believe there's much more we can do around geofencing and around other capabilities that we're also in discussions to put forward. But key to partnerships, and what I believe is really what makes these elements work well together. You need a partner that, first of all, is committed to improving that experience. They're looking to really enhance those capabilities. And you're working with a partner like Hitachi, who has the data analytics experience. They can bring to the table real-time information that will add value to passengers when they're delivered. I mean, information is only as good as what you do with it and how you work with those data points. So integrating with partners, making that a seamless experience, it's a lot of what we do. And it's been a really good experience so far. And we're looking forward to what else we can do within the Transport Authority ecosystem. Hand it off to you, Kyle, or John, if you want to add anything on.
Oh, I guess real fast, Carlos, it's been great to work with your team. And I think it's, again, going back to my earlier point, this is a very interesting solution that really met the demand of the customer. And so in this particular environment, there's a lot of, honestly, football fans that come into the system. There's a lot of other individuals and just it really, I believe, delivered great value and met the needs for the Baton Rouge area. John, what are your thoughts? Or if you have any thoughts, excuse me.
I think to this point, you both have raised the key part. No one agency or private sector will ever be able to solve these problems. So this is by definition a multi-group, multi-agency, private, public problem to solve. We all have to tie in. So as public servants, it's incumbent on us to partner and partner the right way with the private sector. So like on our electric bus pilot, as well as our Low-No grant, we partnered, of course, and did a public partnership to actually fund that pilot. So it was the city of Orlando, our local utility, OUC, and Lynx, with support from FDOT, the Florida Department of Transportation, that actually made that thing happen. So it's public partnership. Now the question is, okay, we've learned all those things. Guess what? We can't scale it alone. We need the private sector. So the key part here is for everybody who's bought, who has an electric vehicle, how many folks know when they drive up to the charger, how much it's going to cost per equivalent gallon to charge that day? So you'll know next month when you get your bill, after an actuary actually checks the math to make sure that you got billed the right demand charge, base charge, taxation, and to come up with what is that, and then you have to divide it against your miles that month, and then come back with an equivalent gallon cost to even see if it compares to what you are currently used to. Where we pump diesel, we pump CNG, or compressed natural gas, we know before we pump that equivalent gallon how much it costs, $2 and X cents, 89 cents. And in the case of some of these things, we have long-term hedges, so we have a consistent cost. So we need to break the wheel on how we think about electricity as fuel. And electricity as fuel, in my mind, should be a comparable, so it should be an equivalent cost per gallon, not a bundled up cost that you allocate to somebody every month. Somebody taking on the risk of the ups and downs and saying, here's your cost per gallon. That's how fleets can scale. We can't build every pump we need. We're not going to be able to do that. We're public agencies. The private sector, on the other hand, can take the risk and gain the reward. And, all of us win from that. The economic development of building that infrastructure would just help our communities. So to this end, that's going to take private and public, so a P3 kind of environment. So as we think of these types of problems, partnership is the key. That's the mechanism to make it happen. So we look forward to that outcome as we go forward. And as everybody said today, all the things you've seen today and all the things we've talked about today are all partnerships. That's the glue that's holding this all together. So I look forward to more of it.
Great, thank you. We'll now move on to our Q&A portion of the webinar. As a reminder, if you have a question, you can tap that you'd like to ask the panel. Please type in your question in the Ask a Question box in the presentation window. Now, for our first question, it will be, this one is for Kyle.
Yes.
Is there a scope for using blockchain to handle transactions in a transit network?
Absolutely. I think actually this is one of the great areas where blockchain could add value in helping to have an individual that can work through the entire system. And honestly, in this case, blockchain in some ways could replace an API where it helps you get transferred from a system to system, and all of your information stays with you, and so it just makes it effortlessly. So a great use of blockchain potentially.
Great. And John, this one is for you. Will it be possible to get off the Bright Line and then go to all the key destinations in Orlando without needing a car?
So that's a great question, and probably the $1 million question. So the concept is yes. How do we execute against it? So some of the planning is being put in place. We have Terminal C, which is an intermodal hub that Brightline in the coming years will come into. That's where the bus system will be. That's where other multimodal options will be. So passengers can accept those and take them. Our communities are looking at first mile and last mile. So the city of Orlando has scooter and bike ordinances and capability and permitting that it's going through. The county, Orange County, is also doing the same thing. Osceola County is doing the same thing. Seminole County is doing the same thing. So to think about the 2,500 square miles of our region, if you wanted to go to any of those places, I think if we did the absolute, I'd say you might be walking a little bit. But if we're saying the major hubs like getting to Disney, getting to Universal, getting to downtown, going to such organizations as Lockheed Martin or UCF in the Research Triangle, those areas, that is the vision and part of our construct for the next transportation network here in Central Florida. The question, of course, is time, funding, and focus. So we'd love to do it. So we'll build whatever transportation network our community is willing to support and operate it safely and reliably. That's our intention, and as public servants with an eye to fiduciary responsibility as well.
Great. We have time for one last question, and then we'll have a quick wrap up. This question is for Carlo. How do you ensure your advertisers get their guaranteed impressions per month?
That's an excellent question. And guaranteed impressions as such, that would be complex. But what's really interesting about digital media and handling mobile engagement and actually pushing out information to your customers, that latest example that I gave you around the coffee discount, which was part of the demo, what's interesting with the technology is that you're able to actually know how many passengers in this instance actually received the message, how many clicked on that link to understand what promotion was available for them. That means you're counting eyeballs right there, which is what you're referring to from guaranteed impressions. And then you can measure how many of those passengers actually redeemed that coupon. There's a trace that you can actually have to understand how many people downloaded that coupon, that wallet, and then start building your KPIs around that. So guaranteed impressions is one element. I understand where that question is going, but at least it's a leapfrog step towards just having something that's printed as an advertisement. You got your logo there. You don't really know how many people saw that was printed. With this technology, you know exactly how many people downloaded your coupon and if and what type of action they took with it. So that's a benefit of digital and mobile that I think gives a lot of value to what you do around advertisement and promotional activity.
Great. And then, Kyle, do you have any final thoughts to share before we close?
No, I mean, I think just in closing, I thank you, Emily, for the moderating this. Carlos, John, obviously, thank you so much for participating. I want to thank everybody out there that watched, and hopefully you found a lot of value in this session. I think the EV transition is very ripe, and honestly, the opportunity to utilize digital data and new, I guess, emphasis on rider journeys to really take a chance to leapfrog your technology and your transportation industry. So we look forward to be partners with you as you go through that transformation. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. And just for everyone else, we do have all your questions. If we didn't get to them today, then the Hitachi team will respond to them via email. But just want to say on behalf of Mass Transit and Endeavor Business Media, we would like to thank our sponsor, Hitachi America, for making today's webinar possible. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to serving you in future webinars. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.